Question number 4 reads, if the labor force of a country as of May 2008 was 154.5 million, there were 146 million employed and 8.5 million unemployed. There were about 2.18 million in prison. Calculate the official unemployment rate. How can you calculate an unemployment rate? How do we find unemployment rate? So last time we did say that unemployment rate is equal to what? How do you find unemployment rate? Hello? Colleagues, how do you find unemployment rate? What's the formula used to find unemployment rate? Okay, so we did say that it's the number of unemployed divided by the total labor force, right? Multiplied by 100. So you go, you check how many people are unemployed. How many people are not employed? If the labor force for a country was that, so we're given the labor force, and there are 146 million employed, and we're also given employed, and the 8.5 million unemployed. So let's write the people who are unemployed. Unemployed is 8.5 divided by the total labor force. Okay. So what is this? It's 8.5 over 154.5. So 8.5 divided by 154.5 times what? Times 100. This gives us an unemployment rate. What is the unemployment rate?
Are we not supposed to remove those who are in prison?
Let me check. Thank you. Let me check. If the labor force of a country as of May 2008 was 154.5 million, there are 146 million employed. So the employed one were 146, and the 8.5 million unemployed. There were about 2.18 million in prison. So the 2.18 million are not added. They're not part of the employment rate. They're not part of employment. So what you can do is the other way of doing it. Let me just do this. Just a minute. You can still add the number of employed plus unemployed, right? Employed plus unemployed. You still find the same thing. Are you following? We are not removing the unemployed. These people are not part of the labor force. Mr. Shagasung, the 2.18 are not part of the labor force.
Okay, I'm following.
Yes. So the labor force is made up of the employed plus unemployed. So we add employed plus unemployed. It gives us 154.5, which is our labor force. So what is our unemployment rate? What is our unemployment rate? People are not multiplying. It's around 5.5%, isn't it? Around 5.5%. That is our unemployment rate. Any question? So just understand the formula properly, that unemployment rate is the number of unemployed divided by the total labor force, whereas the labor force is the sum of the unemployed people plus the employed people, right? Yeah, so basically that's what is there. Is there any question? There is no questions. Now, question number B said, imagine those 2.18 million people were not in prison, but were in the labor force and unemployed, right? They were in the labor force and unemployed. Calculate what the unemployment rate would be. What do you think we are going to do here? Anyone?
We are going to add the 2.18 to the labor force.
Okay. Thank you. Any other thing that we are going to do in addition? Oh, that is all.
We need to put them on those who are unemployed.
Okay, thank you. So the 2.18 shall also be added to the unemployed. So to the number of these people who are unemployed, we shall add 8.5 plus 2.18, because we are told that these guys are now part of the labor force, but they are unemployed. So that's why we are summing up the number of unemployed divided by the total labor force plus the same guys, they are now part of the labor force. 18 multiplied by 100. That gives us the new unemployment rate. Okay, so I shall have 8.5 plus 2.18. And what are you finding on top? Okay, you find 10.68 divided by 154.5 plus 2.18, giving us 156.68 multiplied by 100. What are we finding as the unemployment rate? What's the new unemployment rate?
6.8.
Okay, 6.8%. 6.8%. Yeah, so that's what is there. Is there any question from anyone? Any question? So, in short, for you to understand these numbers properly and what to do with the numbers, you have to go back to theory. Understand theory, understand what the labor force is, what forms the labor force, okay? How do we calculate an employment rate? We go back to theory. That's why we get the formulas, how to calculate an employment rate. And once we understand theory, that's why I always emphasize, if you understand theory, even calculations will make sense. Yeah, so that's what is there. You were asked to read the following the questions below and upload a PDF or a photo of your solutions. Number 1, illustrate demand pull inflation on a graph and explain the causes thereof. So the demand pull inflation, we did say that on the vertical axis, you have price, you have quantity or output, you know, on the horizontal axis, then it's demand pull, okay? You have your supply constant, The first demand is here, and this is aggregate demand, AD1. And you will have the price. You have Y1 and the price 1. When demand increases, aggregate demand has increased to AD2, that is aggregate demand 2. Check what happens. Output increases, also the price increases to P2, right? And also, if again aggregate demand is to increase to AD3, as aggregate demand is increasing, you can see that the prices, the general price level is increasing as well. So this is how to represent demand pull inflation, okay? Demand pull inflation, yeah, which is just caused, the type of inflation that is caused by an increase in the aggregate demand. Any question? Was this very difficult? No, sir, it wasn't. It was not difficult, isn't it? So the question is also asking us to give the causes, to mention the causes of demand pull inflation. What are some of the causes? Anyone? At least here we can now all participate. We have seen the graphical representation of the same, but what about the causes of demand pull inflation? Let's just share. What did we say are the causes?
When people have a lot of money to spare, it's one of the causes.
So
Okay.
the other cause is when unemployment reduces in the country.
Okay, yes, when unemployment reduces, when people have enough money to spare. Thank you. Any other? Okay, so we did indicate that any of the changes, right? Any of the changes or in these elements that form aggregate demand. Remember, there are these elements of ours, right? Remember, aggregate demand is found by this same equation. So any of these changes that can cause to an increase in aggregate demand curve, demand will result into inflation, right? For example, we did say that if you see taxes reduce, then consumption shall increase, right? When taxes reduce, consumption increases and even aggregate demand will increase, right? When interest rates reduce, if the interest rates reduce, investments will increase as well. If the investments increase, then aggregate demand will increase. Similarly, an expansionary fiscal policy, that is to say, when government increases expenditure, once G increases as well, you will see aggregate demand increasing, hence a shift in the aggregate demand curve, and that results into inflation. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I lost network because
Okay. I was saying the easiest way of looking at aggregate, the causes, you just write this equation which gives us aggregate demand. We know that aggregate demand is equal to C, consumption plus investment, plus government expenditure plus net exports. So we know that any factor that can cause a change in any of these elements will cause an increase in the aggregate demand. So we did say that if taxes are reduced by the government in what is known as a contractionally fiscal policy, or an expansionary fiscal policy, I mean, the government consumption will increase. If consumption increases, C increases, keeping other factors constant, aggregate demand will increase this side. Then there will be a shift, especially a rightward shift. If you reduce the interest rates, right? So I've said, number one, if you reduce taxes, you reduce the interest rates. The interest rates reduce, investments will increase. Okay, once you reduce interest rates, investments shall increase. Once investments increase, aggregate demand will do what? Will increase as well. Okay, or if the government decides to increase their expenditure, then G will increase. If G increases, even aggregate demand will also increase at the same time, holding other factors constant. If the government decides to give subsidies, especially exporting subsidies, you will see that we'll have more of exports, holding other factors constant, aggregate demand will increase. So all those adjustments, they lead to an increase in aggregate demand. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. We are hoping that people are following and are getting better. The question reads, briefly explain the cures of demand pull inflation. How can you reduce? How can you cure? What are some of the cures of demand pull inflation? What did we say last time?
I think
So
when the government,
ladies, okay, ladies first, then Ms. Ashakasungu will come through. Yes, you can continue.
when the interest rates are regulated by the government, we'll
Okay. have tried to cure, right? When the
Yes,
interest
sir.
rates are moderated. Thank you. Yes, sir.
yes, Wasa.
Yes,
I think like the way you said on the equation. So
yeah,
I think it's the opposite of those things that we are doing in question 5. This time now,
exactly.
we'd like to do the opposite.
We do the opposite, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. And exactly, once you increase taxes now, then consumption will reduce, you reduce government expenditure, then the aggregate demand is reducing. So in short, what you forecast now when you want to cure, you cure on contracting the economy in what is known as the contractional fiscal policy. You aim at contracting the economy, you remove subsidies on the exports and everything. So ideally, you contract the economy. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We are okay. Illustrate cost push inflation on a graph and explain the causes thereof. So for cost push, we say that this affects it's the kind of inflation, the cost push, that is influenced by what? By changes in the cost of production. Assuming demand is constant, right? Aggregate demand. Then we have aggregate supply, right? Aggregate supply 1. So imagine cost of production increases. What will happen to supply when the cost of production increases? that we learned in microeconomics.
Very good.
Thank you. So supply reduces, isn't it? When cost of production increases, supply reduces. So when supply reduces, that would be represented by a shift, a leftward shift in the supply in the supply curve, right? So we have Y here, P1. Because the supply curve has shifted to the left, you will see prices increasing and the levels of output decreasing from Y1 to Y2. Prices increasing from P1 to P2. Is that clear? So this is a kind of inflation that is now pushed by the cost of production. As a result, it is even called the cost push inflation. Is there any question? Any clarity needed? I might not talk about this any longer.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you said this is caused by the producer to raise the price to cover the high resources cost.
Yes, so this one is just caused by an increase in the cost of production. Once the cost of production have increased, you know, cost of production, we are talking about things such as increase in labor costs, increase in capital costs. Okay, once the cost of the factors of production are now expensive, then supply will reduce, right? As supply reduces of those commodities, then the prices will go up because these commodities will be scarce, right?
Okay.
Yes, sir. We can ask as many questions as we can. Any other question? Now, what are some of the causes? What are some of the causes of cost push inflation? The main sources, right? We're talking about the main sources of cost push inflation. Can we list them? Of course, we have talked about the umbrella is the increase in the cost of production. Can we single out some of the sources?
One of them is the calamities like drought and maybe floods.
Okay, thank you. So things such as natural disasters, drought, floods, okay, those, they can cause that. What else?
So high cost of raw material.
Yes, high cost of raw material, the increased cost of imported capital and intermediate goods, high cost of raw materials. Any other? All right, so the increase in wages and the salaries, right? That's the increase in the cost of labor. So when labor is costly, what will happen is that people will reduce supply. Are we all
Hello,
fine?
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to find out.
Yes.
Where can you phase in? How can you phase it in terms of like maybe the high cost of electricity? How can you? Where does it fall?
I'm
cost
sorry,
of
the line is
fuel
breaking.
and
The line is
electricity.
breaking. I'm unable to get.
How can you phase it in this form? Oh, I wanted to find out. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Hello,
Yes, I was saying,
yes.
how do we, yes, how do you put in the issue of the cost of fuel and electricity in terms of production?
Oh, okay, okay. So we can say the cost of the raw materials. We use electricity as power, right? It's just part of the material that we use. So those are factor inputs, right? That we use. So once those inputs are expensive, so the increase in the cost of factor inputs, that is now general. When you say the increase in the factor inputs, such as you can put fuel, power, all those things. You got it?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Briefly explain the cures for cost push inflation. What are some of the, the cures of cost push? How can we cure cost push inflation?
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
We can cure it by lowering the salaries of employees, that is wages, and also a decrease of factor of inputs like power and fuel. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Kenya. Do we have any other, an addition or another point? So, reacting to the first point, we may not really reduce the salaries, but let's use the word control. Okay. Yeah, let's control the salaries. Yeah, because it's not about reducing. Yeah, let's just keep them under control. Let's control salaries. Is that okay?
Can also say we control by reducing the expenses.
Yes, we can cut on expenses. So ideally, what you are just focusing on is to reduce the cost of production as a whole. So once you do those things, then you are safe. Do we have any specific effects of inflation?
So maybe before you go there, what
Yes,
of you should say you improve on the machinery, like you bring the robots, can that stand?
Yeah, yes, it actually stands. So that's improving, bringing about technology, okay? Improvement in technology.
Yes.
Because that will increase the production. Thank you very much. Even that one stands out as a point. So it will increase the supply.
Sir,
Ma,
just a scenario like the way what was happening recently, like people are exporting more of our staple food, maize, right?
yes.
They have decided to export to other countries so that they get more money. Hence, it made the local supply low.
Yes.
So now, if it is reduced, like you put strings on the exports, I think it can also help.
Okay. Yeah, it's yeah, we can control the export. That's why there are tariffs, right? There are those tariffs. We talked about that on the external sector, isn't it? Yes, we can make sure that, but You know, when you look at what's this, the maize production, it was just one commodity. That was just one commodity. So we may not say because the price of maize is up, then there is inflation in the country. We will not be economical enough in terms of, yeah. So ideally, when the price of only one commodity has increased, we don't say that is inflation. I think from the definition, we said inflation is the overall increase in the general price level, meaning all the prices of all the goods across, they have increased by some unit. That is inflation. Did you get that one?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah, that's the idea behind that. Yeah, so we can just look at it. We can try to cure any cost push inflation by looking at two sides. We can either look at the factors that can increase production so that at least we have high supply, or we can look at the factors that can reduce the cost of production. I think you have gotten that point.
There's this question that is just my thought.
Mm-hmm.
Now that like our country, we do not have control over the oil, and most likely, oil whenever the prices of oil are up, it increases the prices of all the general things that we buy.
Yes.
So how do we cure that?
Actually, we don't have a country that do we have a country that has got like a single country that has got power, that has got power over oil?
No, we don't have. There are group of
Exactly. We have groups of companies that control oil, such as when OPEC, you understand, eh? So those things, those commodities are not controlled by a company. All the companies are just price takers. So generally, once those things increase, like for oil, you will see that kind of oil, just like fuel, you know, it affects a lot of things. A lot of production is affected. So that's why you find that once the prices of those go up, you find that almost all manner of production is affected, and hence the prices go up. Just like like electricity as well, fuel, yeah, just like that. Those, once they increase, you find that now people who produce, they start increasing prices, trying to, you know, recover some costs. You got it?
Got it.
Okay. Do I have any other comment, concern before we go to the specific effects? Okay. Let's talk about the specific effects of inflation. What are some of the specific effects, eh?
One of them is affect the purchasing power of the kwacha or dollar. I can say kwacha since we're in Zambia.
Okay, so let's put it a currency. Let's say a currency. Okay, thank you. So it affects the purchasing power of a currency, isn't it? So you can see that the money lose value because of you know, inflation. Thank you for that one. Any other? There are many effects.
The prices are not really controlled because they changes almost all the time.
Okay, so it brings a lot of uncertainty, hence having difficulties in planning. So you cannot easily plan in an inflationary in an inflationary economy, because you know, when you plan, no, I'm going to buy this after 2 months, and by the time you go 2 months, you find that the price of that same thing is even maybe 2 times in terms of price. Okay. Do you have any other?
Yeah, the interest
Hello,
rate.
sir.
Yes, sir.
generally, the prices of goods go up.
Okay.
The prices of goods and services in an economy which has got high inflation will automatically go up.
Okay. Exactly. So anyway, generally, we can read about these effects. There are many of them that we talked about, you know. We discussed about these, we discussed these things in a class, and you are good to go.
Let me just